Redditors, what is something you found weird about a friend or their parents as a kid when visiting or staying the night at their house? They were allowed to draw on their walls. My little brain was not comfortable with that much freedom. Oh wow, if I ever drew on the walls I'd get my butt kicked and my PlayStation 1 taken away. Their family made me do all the work. Like, I get that I shouldn't lounge around when there, and I will help. However, I think mopping all the floors, cleaning the rooms, and taking out the trash can be a bit much. They were always saying I love you to each other and getting along. My high school friend's dad had removed her and her brother's bedroom doors. They also had no locks on the bathroom doors, and if they showered for longer than 5 minutes the dad turned off the water. I felt terribly sorry for them. I don't know if moving away from home feels amazing or scary after not having had any privacy ever. According to friends who also grew up that way, moving away from home comes with the first month of feeling guilty, them going crazy with all the freedom the rest of the year. Her parents were just never around. Her mum was a big partier, so was always out or in the process of getting ready to go out, and her dad was always out on his boat. We had babysitters some of the time, at night, mostly, but not always. I always thought I was a pretty self-sufficient child until I met her. We cooked, cleaned, went to the store, everything, without supervision. We also got away with doing a lot of stuff that would never fly if parents had been there. I never told my parents because they would have flipped if they knew. Stayed the night at a kid's house when I was 8 or so. His mom made a big taco dinner. The next morning, everything was still out on the table, uncovered. Dirty dishes, hardened ground beef, dried out diced tomatoes, nuts. I stayed until afternoon and nothing got touched the whole time I was there. That's horrifying. I've seen people do that with pizza and then eat it the next day because it tastes better. The mom and daughter shared a room and dad slept in a room with his son while the only person with a room to himself was the older brother. A friend of mine didn't have a shower in their house, only a bathtub, and there was a rule that you couldn't fill the bathtub. Bath time was getting a washcloth wet and soapy to sponge yourself with and then rinse off. Also, once I got in trouble from her dad because he had asked me if I wanted my potato cooked whole or cut up, and I said whole, but then I cut parts off to eat. I got yelled at by my friend's dad for throwing out my paper plate that came with the takeout. Apparently in their home you washed and reused disposable plates, forks, knives, spoons, but not cups. After I thought I got the hang of the system and started rinsing out a red Solo cup, I was laughed to scorn by his family. I had a friend who used to play games with explicit adult content or just casually watch pee in the living room. His mom would tell him to stop, in a passive tone, not really making an effort to make him stop, and he'd just laugh it off. I feel like that's what's really going on behind most COD kids monitors. How similar his mum and dad looked. Not incredibly similar, but their facial structure was pretty uniform. Well, turned out his father was his mother's uncle, so there we go. They all sat down and ate dinner together, then spontaneously decided to go get frozen yogurt. I was baffled. My family never eats together and we sure as heck never went for ice cream or anything after. My mom was always too drunk to take us anywhere. They also hugged each other and told each other they loved each other. It was pretty strange for me to realize that not all families weren't affectionate. AWW. My friend's parents slept in different bedrooms, which I thought was pretty weird. Turned out that the dad owned the house and was charging their mum rent to live there, so she got her own room. Apparently this had been the arrangement since they began living together and he just continued charging her rent after they got married and had kids. They divorced eventually, and then the dad got weirdly into crystals and he covered their whole house entire with symbols and rocks and stuff. Very strange guy. Jesus Christ, marry their minerals. I had a friend where you couldn't get anything to drink while you ate. Instead, they'd bring out a jug of water and glasses after you had finished eating and the plates had been taken away. I have no idea what the logic behind this was. I usually have a drink with my meal, but never drink it till after I am done eating. I don't know why I do this, but it just happens. They shared a toothbrush and kept their dirty laundry in a closet, which they rotated to prevent mold. I noticed that all of the rooms in this kid's house could only be locked from the outside of the room. I thought that only existed in horror movies. I have friends that lock their kids in their rooms to keep them from wandering around the house at night. I think they wouldn't have that problem if they didn't try to make them sleep 12-14 hours a night, plus naps during the day. I had GTA 3 and my friend wanted me to bring it over. I went over with it and his mom caught us playing it. She flipped the frick out and told him he couldn't play video games for a month. Then she immediately took me home and told my mom that I had the game. My mom said I know. I bought it for him. My friend's mom had a horrified look on her face and told me I can't see her son anymore. That lasted a week. That's when I learned most parents are significantly more strict than mine were. There was absolutely no talking at the dinner table. We said grace and ate in complete silence. My house was a ruckus at dinner time. Laughing, stories, telling your parents about your day. Not at Sean's house. Just eat. It was so creepy. All you heard was chewing and forks tapping plates. They seemed pretty normal outside of that. Not at Sean's house sounds like a title for an indie horror movie. I visited a friend's house in 3rd grade. Everything was normal until my friend did something and got in trouble. His dad then hit him in the face and gave him a bloody nose. I don't think I told my parents, but I just never went back there. I was spanked growing up, but this was totally different and I knew it was wrong. My friend always walked around at home naked. We were 18 and even when her dad, uncles were around she didn't mind. She told me they were closing it. I found it very weird. In a few months she admitted that she kissed her uncle and she liked it. I stopped going over ever since. I totally saw your friend's home movie on Pornhub once. The very few people I've had over at my dad's discovered what I meant when I begged them not to come over. The crap area, the guns, and the empty beer cans scared the frick out of them. My friend's parents and my friend had their own food in the fridge that nobody else was allowed to have. So once when I was staying over, we got hungry, went to get some food. I think I saw yogurt or something and was like, oh, how about that? And she replied, no, that's my mum's yogurt. And this applied to a lot of the food in her fridge. In my family, we share all of the food, unless it's some specific dietary thing. And obviously just try not to be dongs and be fair with it. She was an only child, as am I, and I just found it weird that her parents would buy food and tell her that she couldn't have it. I thought that all food in the fridge should belong collectively to the family. My family has rules like this. We do share what we order from the grocery store, but you have to ask first. If I had a friend over and my parents weren't home, anything they typically ate was off limits, since I couldn't ask. This food was often for lunch or something, and as a result, the amount was very important. Sharing everything feels like it's infringing on my boundaries. An old friend of mine taught his dog to pee and poop in the corner of the kitchen. I did not eat anything while there. There was this weird girl in my neighborhood growing up. When I was 5 or 6, she was around 11 or 12. I always thought she was freaking weird, and my friends in the neighborhood felt the same way. I don't remember the details much, but one day I ended up playing with her and we went in her house to use one of those old creepy crawly toy ovens. It was an uncomfortable experience and her house smelled weird, and the strangest thing to me was that she kept encouraging me to drink Pediasure. She drank multiple cups of it while I was at her house and kept licking her lips talking about how delicious it was, while she stared at me with crazy eyes. I never went in her house again and I steered clear of her after that. Growing up, my best friend's house constantly smelled like peanut butter. His entire family was allergic to peanut butter and never had any in the house. My one friend had a sister who was 1 year younger and they did not get along. I was shocked to find out they each had their own special food cabinet and special shelves in the fridge that the other couldn't touch because they fought over everything. They each even had their own carton of milk. I have 4 siblings and there is no way my parents would put up with crap like that. My friend's dad was 43 and I was 16. I just won a wrestling tournament he didn't win as a kid, and in his passive aggressive anger the whole night he wanted to wrestle me. Sounds like he wanted to move past passive. They were filthy, as in, I don't think these people had ventured outdoors in years, and yet they had a metric fuck ton of dirt inside the house. And I'm not talking dirty footprints, I mean dirt. It was the weirdest freaking thing. Their dead in the house was demolished. My friend would put his stuffed animals in the freezer when he was mad at his grandmother. Where I come from, this is actually pretty common. I had a friend whose parents were from India. When I came over to hang out one day, my dad called to ask if I could stay later because he was running late to pick me up. That meant they had to feed me, while Anka's mother cooked. His father served me dinner every American kid truly love. A bowl of Oreos and milk. All my white friends think Indian food is nasty. I would give that to my friends if I could. My parents never got physical with us. One night staying at a friend's house, his dad came in upset over something and proceeded to beat my friend up a little. He took it like a champ, but I'd never seen anything like that in my life. I cried and his mom took me home that night. I told my dad I was scared and he hugged me. My dad is a real one. My childhood friend slept with her mom and stepdad. The mom and stepdad were in a queen bed and my friend had a twin pushed up next to them. When I spent the night, I slept in the twin bed with my friend. I was on the end, so I wasn't next to either of the parents. But it was still freaking weird. That is weird. My best friend kept these weird insects in the house that she brought back from her farm. She had them in a little plastic tub and would take them out in her hand and let them crawl all over her. Parents were fine with this. Fast forward a few months. The bugs are everywhere, like a plague. I'm guessing they escaped. My friend's dad charged them money to play games on the Commodore 64. It was 1990, I think. As a guest I got some free games. They also made me shower before bed, which creeped me out because I'd always showered in the morning. When I asked if I had to, they insisted. The dad was a freaking weirdo. I was so happy when I got picked up and never returned. Turning the internet off at night. Annoying as crap. My parents used to threaten to start doing this, but like most of their other bright ideas, they just kinda forgot about it. One friend's parents were adamant that everyone in the house peed sitting down, to the point where if you were in the bathroom they would knock on the door and remind you to sit down. I had an ex whose family did this. One of my friend's house was completely loaded with soda. I can't remember what his dad did for a job, but he DJ'd on the side and went through the stuff like crazy. Every time I went to his house, there was at least a couple hundred cases of Dr. Pepper. It was crazy. My dad worked at a bottling plant. If the bottles had wonky labels, the bottles formed strangely, or the mix wasn't quite right, he could bring them home for us. We had stacks of Pepsi and other things like little mixer bottles. They didn't use toilet paper. They used rags. Not one of my best sleepovers. They had a payphone in their den. This was a while ago when payphones weren't uncommon, but not in a house. It was really weird. Want to use the phone? Go ahead. Put the money in and make a call. We found her stepdad's pee stash next to the room we were sleeping in. Also, her mom was smoking weed while the little sister sat in her lap. I was 9 and had no clue what marijuana was until I asked my mom what my friend's mom had been smoking. This isn't weird, but it was weird to 10-year-old me. My friend was allowed to play any music she wanted on loudspeakers. In my family, only my parents played the music they wanted. We had to use headphones if we wanted to play any music. This rule remained until I left the house at 26. Your friend had much better taste in music than you. I was walking home late after school with a friend and we lived on the same block, but hers was before mine. We were going to have a sleepover at my house and she had brought her overnight stuff with her. She borrowed something from me a week before, so we decided to stop at her house on the way so she can give me it. When we got there we found her mom, stepdad and her mom's best friend having a threesome in the living room. They stopped what they were doing and just stared at us and said absolutely nothing. When we saw what was happening, she ran out the house screaming and crying and refused to talk about for the rest of high school. It was pretty fricked up at the time. It's still fricked up now. For me, it was that my one friend's parents never closed their bedroom door. It was always open. If they weren't there, it was open. If they were asleep in bed, it was open. I always found it kinda weird because I figured sleeping with an open door is like sleeping with no privacy. Also, that my one friend's 14 or 15-year-old sister asked me to show her how I kissed by instructing me to kiss the headboard on her bed. I was pretty creeped out considering I was a 10-year-old kid who was still afraid of girls. My parents are like that. To them, a closed door automatically means you're up to something or doing something you shouldn't be doing. No locks, No closed doors, no privacy, ever, except the bathroom of course. It drove me insane. My best friend's parents' room had twin beds. For quite a few perfectly happy couples, they are better sleeping separately. They get a better night's sleep and can have different mattress firmness. Their house is full of religious paraphernalia. Little angels, saints, Jesus. Every piece of knick-knack is religion themed. And the pictures, popes, other saints. Seriously, how many saints are there? Prayers, doves, you name it. They have only 3 family photos. The parents on their wedding day in front of a church, of course, and the kids with their first communion dresses. My friends would kiss their parents on the lips. We were 8 years old. I thought it was gross and weird. My grandparents did this. It's totally normal in some cultures. I still think it's weird. Like this video and this good boy will play you a nice song. Like and subscribe, you magnificent person.